And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Wednesday. Hope you're having a great week. Special podcast here today. Today's podcast brought to you by About Golf Simulators. In the backdrop there, full lesson day ahead. And I'm excited here today because got a special guest on. Happens to be the #1 ranked amateur in the world, and he just accepted the Ben Hogan Award down in Fort Worth, Texas on Monday. And that was the second time that he got the Ben Hogan Award. And that goes to the best collegiate player every single year, Ludvig Aberg. How you doing? Thanks for joining us here.
I'm good. Thank you, Travis. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's fun.
So how was that down at the Colonial on Monday, your second go around?
Yeah.
Ben Hogan, congrats. Was that a cool night?
It was awesome. It was really special. They hosted an amazing event, the Ben Hogan Committee, GCA, and Friends of Golf, and they make sure that you feel very welcomed. They make sure that you feel like you're a part of the Ben Hogan family, and they make sure that you understand what Ben Hogan, stood for and embodied. And for me to be a part of that whole thing is just incredible. So. Obviously, it was kind of the cherry on top to win it as well. I think just being one of the finalists is pretty cool if you look at all the names that has been there in the past, and it's super fortunate to get my name on the trophy. Yeah.
Second time too. The only other person that's done that is John Rahm. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, us Europeans.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Rahm from Spain. You're Swedish. You came over here. You play at Texas Tech, 23 years of age. You just won the Big 12 Men's Championship as an individual. That's back to back here. I'm starting to see why now you're, the #1 player in the world from an amateur perspective. How does that hit you? Do you ever just sit back and just kind of think about, God, I'm the #1 golfer in the world as an amateur? Is it ever just like, what?
It's pretty crazy. It is, but. I think a little bit at first, because it's always been like one of the goals of mine to become world #1. And when it actually happened, it kind of hit me a little bit that, you can actually, call yourself the best player in the world on the amateur side. So obviously super happy about that, but it's not something that I think about every day. It's, I try to keep my both feet in front of me and do the right thing. So. For me, it's more of a receipt of me to do some good stuff, and hopefully I'll be able to keep doing that.
Yeah, it's just what it is, right? It's part of the process. I like that. It's the receipt of the work that you're putting in. You got a lot ahead of you coming up. We'll get to this perhaps potential announcement next week about turning professional, but you've got one more collegiate event to attend, and that's the national championships in Scottsdale, which the team leaves tomorrow, right? And you guys teed up this weekend?
Yeah. So we start first round is Friday over at Greyhawk in Scottsdale. So it's a cool course. It's been there for the last 2 years, so we kind of know what to expect, and it's a good challenge. The greens are getting firm in the afternoon, and the rough gets pretty thick as well. So. I think it's a great championship golf course for us, and obviously really looking forward to compete. And with it being my last amateur and collegiate event, I think it'll be a little bit emotional coming down the last couple of holes, but hopefully I'll have something else in my mind and try to win the tournament. But no, it'll be a lot of fun.
College golf. I got a lot of people that listen to this podcast. A lot of players, a lot of coaches, a lot of young, really good players that are thinking about college golf. If you reflect back at your time at Texas Tech and your amateur career, what advice would you give a talented player going to college as a freshman, right? Because it seems like, and I've coached a lot of kids from high school into college, that first year is difficult. There's a lot of obstacles there. A lot of things are changing. You're not living with mom and dad anymore. So what advice would you give them as they enter their freshman year into a college?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I was in that same boat a couple of years ago too, whenever I started. And for me, it was a big change coming over from Europe to go to college in America. And I always say when people ask me that, just be okay with it, be okay with taking a bit of time to get adjusted. And because it's a big change, and, all of a sudden you have new group of friends that you try to, get acclimated to. And you're still, trying to get to know your coaches, your teammates, and all the people around you. And that will take some time.
Hmm.
There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but it's also so much fun. Like
Hmm.
I try to tell them, and we actually had a conversation about this yesterday too. That I think it's so important to really enjoy golf, and I consider myself one of them that absolutely loves the game of golf, and it's just so much fun to be in that environment, and always have your buddies around you to hang out with and practice with, and it's such a special environment. But I would say for a freshman coming in, you might not be Tiger Woods starting the first tournament and winning everything. It might take
Hmm.
some time, and not stress about it. Just be okay with having a bit of patience, and if you do the right things over time, it's going to show up. So um, that was probably what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. That doesn't always happen in your freshman year, right? Like sometimes you come in and
Right.
it takes a little while, get your feet on the ground. You might not be traveling right away. There's
Hmm.
probably going to be some things that happen maybe that you weren't quite expecting. And
Yeah.
so you kind of just, like you said, keep your feet in front of you and keep working hard and doing the things, managing your time, and then just let things play out your sophomore year, then into your junior
Hmm.
year, et cetera, et cetera. What do you
And
think has been your biggest improvement, would you say, both on and off the golf course for you
hmm
as a collegiate who's going to be graduating come the fall?
hmm um, I think personally, I've obviously matured a lot over the last couple of years, and I would say, I'm still the same person as I was when I came, but I still think, or I want to think that I still, that I, that I do things in a more mature way, and
Hmm.
I'm more efficient with my practice and my tournament play. And because I mean, I used to be able to, I mean, I wanted to hit balls for 10 hours a day, but sometimes, there at a certain point you understand that it's not going to be bringing you any value.
Hmm.
It could be more detrimental, um, but I think the main thing for me that I've improved since I came over here is probably short game and putting. That's been the part of my game that I've been working on the most, because I feel like that's where I had more room for improvement.
Hmm.
And that's the thing. If you look at all the top guys in the world, whether it's amateur golf or pro golf, that's that's kind of their safety net. If Because everyone's not going to hit every green every round that they play. You might have
Right.
some scrappy tee to green rounds, but if you have a decent short game and putting, that saves you a little bit. You're still, keep yourself in the tournament, and then the next day you go out and shoot 6 under, and you're back in the tournament. So I think I picked up on that pretty early, and I told myself that I want to get better, and I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at that.
Hmm.
There's still a long ways to go, but it's that's the beauty about golf. I think is there's always rooms for improvement. There's always stuff that you can get better at, which is I think why we love it so much.
Right. Yeah. There's always, we're all working on something. I'm going to put your swing up here. I want to talk
Yeah,
about your game a little bit, man.
yeah.
I've been following you for a while, and when I look at your swing, I posted this out on Twitter, and Eddie Pepperell
Mhm,
commented on it. He said, "Man, this is such an efficient swing. You're a big guy.
mhm,
You create good speed, but when I watch this swing, it just looks it looks very simple. I mean, just
mhm,
up and down the plane, body rotates with it. Everything's kind of moving together. Not a lot of extra moving parts. When you watch this swing, your
mhm,
coach, longtime coach back from Sweden, as I understand,
mhm.
share with my audience the journey of this swing, what we're looking at, and maybe some of the things you're working on."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I owe a lot to Hans that I work with still, and he's in charge of the high school that I went to back a few years ago. So we still work together. We still do FaceTimes on the range, and every
Okay.
time I go home, we get together, and we work on a few stuff. But I felt like we laid a pretty good foundation a couple years ago. We worked hard on the technique, and last couple of years we've been fortunate to not do a whole lot of changes. It's been pretty easy, pretty straightforward what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, when I was younger, I used to be a lot skinnier. I used to be a little bit more wider, and I used to have a little bit more moving parts, especially my upper body used to be almost, in my backswing, I used to almost tilt a little bit towards the
Okay.
target.
Mm-hmm.
And from here, obviously, I need to go back. So it would be almost like a swaying motion, which would, be pretty bad face control. So that's something that I still work on. I
Okay.
still, try to feel almost as if I'm loading backwards, and then from here I shift the pressure going forward. It's just because my tendencies, and I think that's the thing with every golfer in our level, they're gonna have tendencies, and I think just being aware of those and just being okay with them being there, and
Yeah.
then and have certain keys and certain things and drills and whatever to make sure that you don't go too far on one side.
Yeah. Yeah. You can
So
see at address there, like you've got a little side bend away
yeah,
from it, and
exactly.
then when you turn your upper, I think you see your head just stays right there. So I think that's a
Hmm.
that's a really clean look. And then from there, you can just go back to your left side and hit it with no compensation. When you're doing that and
Yeah.
you're cruising along, what's the ball flight? What is it? Is the ball flight a little draw, a little fade? Is it the same from your
Yeah.
driver to the irons? How does that work?
So I'm always gonna have an easier time fading it. So cutting across it, it's always gonna be my tendency. So
Mhm.
whenever I do have a practice week or some time to work on it, I always try to work on the draw, and I try to feel that my club face stays. For me, it feels like it's shut, but it really isn't.
Mhm.
Um, so that I can work on feeling that the club path goes out to the right, just because I know in tournament play, it's going to be so much easier for me to cut it. But I play my best golf when I'm able to do kind of a little bit what I want to. And when I'm struggling is when I can't really turn it over. That's
Okay.
when I won't be able to score very well. And I've actually been changing my driving kind of theory a little bit lately because I've always been wanting to play a draw with my driver. But with, lately I've been trying to because my tendency when I hit my driver is to get too much up on it.
Mm.
So I would be, like almost like my iron swing, I'd be first
Mhm.
here towards the target and then I'll be too much on this side. So, I'd be like 4 or 5 up on it and my face control would be terrible. And I would almost hit like a high non-spinny toey draw, and it was just bad face control and not
Mhm.
very consistent. So I've always or I've almost been trying to feel that I try to cover it a little bit better, to keep the angle of attack a little bit lower, probably around 2, no more than 3, and from there almost be okay with it leaking a little bit right.
Mhm.
Um, just because it's so much easier to play with, and it's the miss is going to be easier to play with, and that's going to give me more control too with the face. So I feel like it's gotten a little bit better, but it's still something I'm working on.
It's interesting you say that. Brooks Koepka just won in the PGA. That's what he feels like. He likes to hit a fade, but it feels like he's hitting down on it just a little bit more
Hmm.
and kind of covering it and exiting to the left, not
Yeah,
not backing up and launching. So it feels
yeah,
down, but it's
yeah, but it really isn't. Not for me, at least. I mean,
right.
it might,
It's not. Yeah.
for someone, it might be a different feel or a different, drill that you try to, work on. But for me, I'm never going to be down on it. So I'll
Yeah.
always, try to feel like I'm covering a little bit better to keep the
What's
angle
your
of attack.
what's your cruising speed with the driver? Like you're just out there and cruising. Like what are you
Yeah,
carrying it and
we
hitting it?
uh we actually yesterday, or when we played at Colonial, me, Michael, Thor Bjornsson, and Gordon Sargent, we went out and played 6 holes
Hmm.
on Monday, and we had a TrackMan out there, and we had some speed, and we checked some ball speed, and I was up like I've gotten a little bit stronger lately, so I was swinging it probably 22, 23. club head speed, and
Okay.
ball speed I had, between 83 and 85. So
Nice.
that's probably been, you know, just because I've gotten a little bit stronger and being able to cover it and get that a little bit more compression, I think.
When you as you look ahead, and of course you've got the national championship coming up here in Scottsdale, and that'll be your. And how good would that be, right? Just go ahead and win the national championship, and so you've checked every single box that you could possibly imagine.
That'd be nice.
But then after that, right? Next week, it sounds like you're going to be turning professional, and as you kind of look ahead, it's. I find myself thinking about this with the next generation coming up, turning professional, and looking at the landscape of professional golf, because it's as I don't know, complicated probably would be an appropriate word. I mean, it can be complicated. It's very different than when I was your age, or really anybody over the last up to this point. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. So when you look at the professional landscape, you're going to turn pro. How does it all hit you? What does it mean to you when you look at the next step for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like you said, I think there's been so many changes over the last, only, a year or 2 years. It wasn't, I've always had, in the back of my head growing up, like the way that I thought it was going to be played out. And now it's changed drastically, and it might look a little bit different. But, I think what Brendan Van Doren has done with the PGA Tour University program and their staff has been incredible. They've opened up so many doors for us and opportunities that we are able to take care of or take advantage of. And, hopefully I'll be able to take advantage of that PGA Tour U program and get tour status for the rest of the year as well as for 24. So I've always been, I've always seen myself as a PGA Tour player, and for me, winning tournaments that's what I want to do, and playing in the big events, playing for the crowds, and playing the Ryder Cups. That's what I want to do, and that's what drives me. So whenever all these opportunities came along with the PGA Tour U, we're obviously over the moon, and I think it's going to be beneficial for anyone involved or everyone involved, and it's going to make college golf better because now it gives you an incentive to stay in school. It gives you a clear pathway to the PGA Tour through college, and I think people are going to be more prone to come over to college, someone who might have not done it in the past. So I think it's going to be making college golf stronger, and I think it's ultimately going to make professional golf stronger too.
So do you see yourself following that path when you turn pro next week, where as the number one ranked player in PGA Tour University, you'll be able to get starts in play on the PGA Tour this season, right? Like you would be able to get out there this season and into next. So is that sounds like that's what you're going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Canadian Open will be my first tournament.
Okay.
In the next, what's that, a week and a half, something like that. And then it just spirals from there. So if someone would have told me that 2-3 years ago that this would be an opportunity and this would be, something that was a possibility, I'd be, come on, man, nah, that's not true. So
right, yeah, because it's very different, right? I mean,
it's very different.
Yeah, what you're describing right now is very different than what it's been up to this point.
Yeah, and I think everyone is trying to get used to it, and no one really knows how it's going to be played out, and I'm just super fortunate to be a part of it, really.
Yeah. Did Live Golf ever approach you and be like, "Hey, man, come play for us, and here's what we want to do"?
They did. It was pretty early on, so we didn't know how it was going to be played out. We didn't know really what to expect, and at that time, it wasn't something that I want to be a part of. I felt like, potentially you could burn so many bridges that, I don't think that was an appropriate move for someone in my position. But, it is what it is. But I'm really
Was it a lot of money?
It was a lot of money, absolutely. But kind of, like I said before, that's that's not what drives me. That's not what, that's not why I play golf. I love the game and I want to win tournaments, and
Hmm.
that's what I want to do. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, when you have conversations with these fellow collegiate players that are ready to make the jump, the same move that you are, do you find that the majority of them are aligned with PGA Tour University and wanting to fulfill that goal of playing PGA Tour golf, or is there some that are like, yeah, I could take it or leave it. I could maybe just
hmm
go to live, and that's better for me.
I think that's a good question. I do feel like the majority is absolutely on the PGA Tour
Okay.
way. So, but I mean, I understand people that, there are certain situations people are going to be treating it differently,
Hmm.
um, and I know where I stand, and that's what's important to me.
Eugenio Chikara, right? Went to Oklahoma State. Someone that I got to spend some time with over the last couple years,
hmm
and I was a little surprised when he packed up from Oklahoma State and went over to live golf. And I'm sure there's going to be
hmm
others, but it sounds like for you, your goal, and as you got into college, and even with the current landscape of professional golf, is about going out on the PGA Tour and seeing how good you can be, right?
hmm
And the legacy of the tour, the tournaments, RBC Canadian Open, this week at Colonial, I mean, is just rich in history and its alignment to Ben
hmm
Hogan. Next week, the Memorial, Jack Nicklaus.
hmm
Arnie's got his tournament. Tiger is a part of his tournament. I mean, we can just go on and on about all of these
hmm
tournaments that you probably watched as a youngster. It sounds like that means something to you and that you want to be a part of that and
hmm
match yourself up to the best players on the PGA Tour every single week and see where the chips fall over the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely. I mean, just like you said, I mean, just the last couple of days we spent down in Fort Worth with at Colonial, where Ben Hogan had such a big impact, and it's just amazing to see the history, the impact that he's had on the people, and his perseverance, and all the things that he did for the sport, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Arnold Palmer Invitational back in March as well, where Mr. Palmer left his legacy, and I think it's so hard to not to just look by that. I think it's incredible what they did, and it's something that we should. I think anyone should try to embody, and if we can be, half the person that they were, I think it's a pretty good
Mm-hmm.
thing. So, and that's the cool part. I think it's just a history, and the things that they've done for the sport is just incredible, really.
Anybody you've kind of watched and have looked up to out there on the PGA Tour that you've kind of maybe compared your game against that you like? Any names come to mind
hmm
that means something to you?
Um, I think as a young Swede growing up, it's hard not to be a big Henrik Stenson fan. He
Yep.
he's done so much for Swedish golf, and he's still doing a lot for Swedish junior golf, and the level that he played at and still plays at is incredible. And watching him win the tournaments that he did and the style that he, especially, I mean, the one that comes to my mind is the British Open in 2016.
Yep.
I was glued to the TV, and it was just really cool to see that. And so I think it's hard not to say Henrik, with just the impact that he's had on so many kids my age and even younger than that. So he's definitely one that I look up to.
I think about Jonas Blix, who I know lives here in Ponte Vedra. He's won a couple
Yeah,
times on the PGA Tour, and of course, the great Annika Sorenstam, who
absolutely. Yeah.
lives in Orlando, and just an absolute dominant player on the
hmm
LPGA circuit. Is Annika someone that have you met Annika, and have you spent any time with Henrik?
I haven't spent any time with Annika. I'd met her very briefly one time, and I spent a little bit more time with Henrik. We've had dinner once, and he's from the area we're in Sweden. He's pretty close to where I live, so but it's I find it so incredible that he's still so driven. He still wants to get better, and that's what I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Annika has been unbelievable. Like she's still such a big part of the game and still, doing so much for junior golf, not only back home, but also here in America with all the tournaments that she's hosting and all the charities and programs that she's a part of. So that's what I think is really cool that, golf can give you that and golf can, open so many doors. They obviously super role models.
How many hole-in-ones do you have?
I have 4 hole-in-ones.
Okay.
We actually
Okay.
talked about it last week because we had Jack on our team. He made a hole-in-one in our regional tournament,
Yeah.
and I was telling Coach, like, Coach, I've never made a hole-in-one in college because
Never in college.
no, like it's crazy too because the amount of tournaments or the amount of golf courses I've played over the last 5 years, it's incredible. Like it feels
Yeah.
like I've played so many places, and I haven't played my home course in Sweden that much, which makes sense because I'm not home as much. But every time I go home, it seems like I make a hole in one.
Mm.
So like the last 4 years, I made a hole in one just at my home course.
Wow.
Nowhere else. Which is kind of funny, but it's a little weird.
How about your favorite course? Favorite course that you've teed it up?
Yeah, I mean, we played. I think Oakmont is definitely one of my favorites. Unbelievable course,
Yep.
so hard, so good.
That works. Yep.
And then one
Oak Hill,
sneaky-
Oakmont, like all these oak.
all these oak courses are pretty good.
They just head beaters, man. Head
Yeah,
beaters.
right. But one that sticks out to my mind as well is Whispering Pines outside of Houston.
Okay.
It's kind of a hidden course, middle of nowhere. Big pine trees and zoysia everywhere. It's such a nice place. We got to play conference there 1 year ago, last year, and it's just tee to green. It's such a nice golf course.
What's the tournament on the PGA Tour you're most excited to play? I mean, I know the major championships, like those are like you want to get into those, and I get that. But
Yeah.
is there one that kind of sticks out? Maybe two that you're like, man, I can't wait to go there.
Ooh, I mean, there's a few, absolutely. I think, the tournament.
I mean, are you a Phoenix Open guy? Is that your style? Like, do you?
I think a little bit. I think,
Okay.
I've obviously never been a part of anything like that, so I've never experienced it, and it would be really cool to experience. But we were actually, when we played Colonial the other day, God, I love Colonial. It's such a nice place. The golf course is so nice, and I was actually telling Coach that, if I ever had the chance to win this tournament, I'd be over the moon.
Mhm.
So it's just, I think it's kind of like we talked about before with, now that I've, created a bond with the people down in Fort Worth and through the Ben Hogan family and the association, and it's just a special place.
I mean, just this year you played Valspar, you made the cut, finished 61st, and then you were at the
Mhm.
Arnold Palmer Invitational, right? Made the cut, finished 24th. So you've already got a little. I mean, Arnold API was an elevated event, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that was a big event.
and so you finished 24th already there. So that has to give you confidence looking at your game, sizing it up to theirs. I mean, like, I belong here. I mean, how would you describe yourself? What kind of competitor are you? Are you kind of like Brooks Koepka and like, I'm going to probably suffocate you at some point without you knowing about it? Or, are you more like Rory where it's, I'm competitive and I'm going to beat you, but I'll probably give you a hug too when it's all over with.
I'm definitely the second.
Okay.
The more of the Rory. I'm pretty calm. My personality is pretty calm. I don't get too high. I don't get too low, and I always try to be respectful to my competitors, even though I want to beat them. I still want to beat them in the right way. So, but I love competing, and I think it's the best thing about the game. But yeah, I mean, I try to be respectful as well.
Yeah, that's the common denominator, right? At sports at the highest level is competition. And like anybody who's great and they get to that 0.001%, which you clearly belong and will be here in the next week. Like they're a big time competitor and they love the game, right? Like that's those two things kind of see it through, right? Because the skill obviously is there. You're working on it, and you'll continue to, get your craft. But but there's a real passion and a love, right, for the game. And then the competition, people who are highly competitive, it fuels them, it gives them energy. I'm amazed when I see people, that have done this forever, like Henrik Stenson, like Ian Poulter, like Ryan Palmer. We were talking with him down in Texas, and I mean, they just like, how do you just keep going? Because golf can like beat you down, and they just love it, man. They just love the competition, and they love the game and the craft of working on it. And it sounds like you just fit right into that.
Yeah, I mean, just like you mentioned Ryan Palmer, it's funny because he was at the dinner we had the other night at Colonial, and he was a guest speaker. And he mentioned just that he was, he got the question to give advice to me and Michael and Gordon, and he said that exact same thing where, if you love the game and you just be yourself, you're gonna be fine. And I think that was pretty inspiring to hear him. Obviously, have he still has and have had a super successful PGA Tour career, and he's done it his way. That's what's pretty cool, I think.
Anybody you're most excited to play with out there on the PGA Tour? Anybody that you want? Hey, I want to get in that group and run with those boys.
I definitely want to play with Victor. Hovland. I think. Just being Norwegian, I'm Swedish, and
I've played with Victor.
Okay, nice.
So I played with Victor. Gosh, so let's bring this thing full circle. You ready for this? I played with Victor right before he turned pro.
Okay.
At the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Wow, this is kind of weird. What was this? I don't know, 3-4 years ago, maybe. Won the U.S. Open or U.S. Am, and then was playing in API. I had a team in the Pro Am, and I went down and played with him, and he hadn't turned pro yet. So I mean, it was a great day, and we've actually stayed in touch a little since. But just a ball striking exhibition, and to see him, and he's so close now. He's so close now to winning one of those major championships. The short game getting better, the putting's there, obviously the ball striking's there. So we got Victor, who's just a great guy. And then who else? Anybody else?
About
Rom. You want to wrestle with Rom a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I think obviously it'd be sick to play with Rory too. Just because of the caliber that he has, and the game that he sits on he's someone that I've watched a lot of golf from, and to be able to play alongside him would be unbelievable. So those are probably the two guys that sticks out in my mind.
Carl Paulson was Swedish too, I believe. Carl Paulson.
Peterson.
No, not Carl Paulson. Carl Pedersen.
Peterson, yeah,
Peterson, Swedish. Yeah, not Carl Paulson. Like I said this to Carl when we're done. Carl Peterson. Yeah. He was really upright, right? Yeah.
I've never met him. I've never seen him play, but yeah, I've heard some stories about it.
Well, man, you seem like a great young man. Obviously, you got all the game in the world. I mean, geez, #1 amateur in the world, #1 in PGA Tour University, back-to-back Big 12 men's championship from Texas Tech, back-to-back Ben Hogan Awards for the Player of the Year. You've got the national championships next week. Just go ahead and go out there and take care of business and win the national championship while you're at it.
That'd be nice.
And then just all the best, man, in your professional career. Can't wait to watch you. Love your swing. Love your game. And it's been great to get to know you. And we'll be watching you up in Canada here in a few weeks.
Thank you, Travis. I appreciate your kind words, and thanks for having me on.
All right. Ludvig Aberg, Stripe Show Podcast. See you tomorrow.